Hello there, my very good friends. On today's wrestling news, the full extent of WWE's Backstage chaos revealed as several wrestlers may be considering asking for releases. After that one, we have a full list of last-minute changes made to WrestleMania and Raw. Bloody Vince. From there, we will talk about the major WWE star taking a hiatus, that word, after WrestleMania, and then we're going to talk about the potential of Jay White signing for WWE. I'm Andy, this is the news, and if you thought today we were maybe going to have some nicer stuff to talk about that maybe didn't involve Vince McMahon and morale plummeting and last minute changes, I'm sorry. Here we are. This story continues to dominate the news cycle, as it will probably do so for, I don't know, the rest of the week. But we'll dive into a new report here from Fightful Select, kind of talking about the backstage situation in WWE. So yesterday, there were a whole bunch of reports on Vince retaking creative control, on Triple H effectively being relegated to busy work, last minute changes, people being pissed off, morale taking a dip. Vince is effectively back in WWE. He's got the last say, the final say on all things creative now, as we covered on yesterday's video. But this Fightful report is probably the most comprehensive one yet, and it really dives into just the extent of the situation. It confirms the morale has indeed taken a hit, and it kind of directly highlights the hypocrisy of Vince going on CNBC that day and saying, I won't be in the weeds of creative, and then Triple H and Nick Khan doing a meeting backstage where they told talent that nothing was going to change. And then Vince shows up just before the show starts and changes a bunch of stuff. You cannot make this stuff up. You really can't. Now, there's a bunch of stuff here noting that much of the broadcast was indeed changed. Vince was sitting at gorilla position all night, and he was in not all night, but he was at gorilla position, and he had his own office as well, despite WWE sources previously indicating that Triple H would have been in that spot at gorilla. Changes were made to the show as it was being broadcast, which sounds like the bad old days. Run sheets, multiple different ones, were being passed around, and these sweeping changes left the roster a bit frustrated. Some felt that even though the new ideas weren't necessarily creatively bad, they were just hacked off, that this had happened, that the changes had happened. They didn't like the dishonesty of the whole situation, especially considering that many of these people would have been fired when Vince was last in charge of WWE. Don't forget, he resigned, didn't retire last July. Never let him say he retired. That's not true. Now, members of WWE's women's roster were particularly upset by major changes to their content on the night. We'll go over those changes in just a minute in the second story. And staff and talent were particularly frustrated that after a successful WrestleMania 39 and that after proving over the past few months that WWE could do well and be prosperous and be happy and healthy without Vince McMahon, that this had happened. The situation has been described as demoralizing, and now WWE's morale might be at its worst since just before WrestleMania 38, which had previously been described as something akin to an all-time low. So all in all, disappointed WWE talent believe that the past weekend was a way for Vince to kind of weasel his way back into power. And the promises that he wouldn't be involved to this extent and his presence have left people feeling like they were swindled, which is understandable. Now, at least two talents indicated to Fightful that if the situation continued, they'd think about asking for their releases. One of these is a top talent, it's noted here as well, a top-level star, while another has added that they would ride out their deal, and it's understood that several wrestlers are considering their options should this continue. It's noted here that a WWE higher-up as well has indicated that this Friday's SmackDown will be absolutely pivotal, because Raw was in Los Angeles, right? Vince was already in Los Angeles for WrestleMania weekend. He was doing a bunch of stuff regarding Mania and the sale of the company to Endeavor, of course. SmackDown on Friday is in Portland. So if you are among the group who think that maybe Vince was only at Raw because it was in LA and he was there anyway, is he going to travel to Portland for SmackDown? If he does, that might be interpreted as a sign that, yeah, this is here to change. Although I think the situation is pretty clear regarding that anyway, particularly with the stuff that came out yesterday about Triple H no longer having the final word on WWE Creative. Now, we'll move on to the second story here, and I'll give you some of my bigger picture thoughts on all of this when we get to the questions later in the video. But yeah, let's go over some of the changes that Vince made then. Again, this is from Fightful, who kind of just aggregated everything that they'd learned about the situation. There's some changes here, and it should be noted, by the way, before we dive into this, that there's no word on which of these are specifically related to Vince, but as has been reported extensively, he did make huge changes to Raw in particular. So WrestleMania 39, there was supposed to be a segment featuring LA Knight and Bobby Lashley. That was canned. Worked Wrestling had previously reported on that, and Fightful have confirmed it. And it meant that there was no Knight on the show, and Lashley was kind of restricted to fanning around with his trophy from the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Of course, Lashley was originally going to face Bray Wyatt, but we know Bray is unable to compete at the moment. And additionally for Mania, WWE actually brought Shotzi's tank to SoFi Stadium for her entrance, and it wasn't used. So seems like a bit of a waste of time. Now over to Raw. Here's a bunch of stuff was cancelled here. There was a Cody Rhodes segment showing him talking on the telephone. Gone. Bad Bunny likely to be involved in an angle with the LWO. Gone. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, their match with the Street Profits was listed internally as a tag team title match, but it wasn't referred to as that on TV. So that's an interesting one. Candice LeRae and Piper Niven, they were originally supposed to have matches on the show. Gone. And originally WWE was going to run a couple of triple threat matches featuring the women's division that were going to form kind of like a mini tournament to determine the next Raw Women's Championship contender. Gone. They were replaced instead by the women's tag team title contendership match, which was Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez defeating Io Sky and Dakota Kai. Bayley was originally going to be on the show. Gone. Did not accompany her Damage Control stablemates to the ring. Very weird indeed. Omos versus Elias was a last minute addition, and it came so late that Omos had to scramble around to try and find some ring gear because he wasn't expecting to wrestle on the night. Vince McMahon adding a last minute Omos match to the show. The guy's 7 feet tall. I mean, that certainly adds up. And there you go. So, yeah. Triple H is still WWE's chief content officer. I guess still technically head of creative, but it sounds like his role is very much diminished if this demented old freak can just come in and make these changes at the last minute. Sounds like the bad old days, doesn't it? Let's move on. Talk about the major WWE star taking a hiatus. Why can't I say that word? It's Charlotte Flair. Charlotte Flair's taking a break after WrestleMania. PW Insider reported this yesterday, noting that Charlotte had informed WWE of this over WrestleMania 39 weekend. Of course, at WrestleMania, she dropped the SmackDown Women's title to Rhea Ripley in an absolutely great match. Now, this is speculative. There's no confirmation that this is the case. But the rumour is that this could be related to her competing in a bodybuilding contest this summer, which is something that she had indicated she wanted to do in media appearances in the lead up to Mania. Again, we don't know for sure that this is the reason. That hasn't been confirmed. It's just the speculation, and I thought you might be interested in it. So Charlotte has been back in WWE since late December when she came back in, returned on SmackDown and beat Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's title after Ronda had just wrestled Raquel Rodriguez. Prior to that, she'd been away since May. The original reason for that hiatus was for, hey, I said it right, was for her to get married, of course, to Andrade El Idolo, the AEW star, her long-term partner. But that was extended when Charlotte had to undergo some dental surgery, which meant understandably that she couldn't get hit in the face for a while. So originally she was looking at returning around SummerSlam season. That got extended and she came back in December. So now she's taking a bit more time off. Fair play to her. I think the Ripley match was a great one to go out on before a break, and looking forward to her return. Hopefully as a heel. I think she's better in that role, and I don't think many of you would disagree, but shout outs to Charlotte, great match. And finally, let's talk about Jay White potentially going to WWE. It's not happening apparently, this kind of caught me by surprise in particular, but the reports from PW Insider, and it notes that there was absolutely no discussion of Jay White joining WWE during WrestleMania weekend. And from speaking to WWE officials and talent, PW Insider stated that it appears White is not heading to WWE. So this is I'm surprised by this, right? Jay White's obviously a free agent. He left New Japan earlier in the year. We've covered this extensively. At one point, I think Dave Meltzer reported that he'd been weighed up by both WWE and AEW, and it was effectively a 50-50 call. So either WWE has opted to pass on Jay White, or Jay White has opted to pass on WWE. I think he'd be a great fit in that company. He's a great character. He projects really well. He's got tremendous abs. Of course, I think he could be a really effective TV heel in WWE to throw all their great baby faces at. Someone disagreed, it seems, which is fair play. But yeah, quite surprised by this. I guess it probably means he's either going to head to AEW or back to New Japan. New Japan will be weird because he did 2 loser leaves matches in that company. But hey, we'll see what comes of this. I thought he was a shoo-in to head to WWE. Guess I was wrong. We'll see what winds up happening with Jay White. Anyway, over to your questions, which I got from the YouTube community page today. And there's a bunch of, understandably, on similar topics. So we'll go through a few of them. Last one's a bit more positive because, you know, well, is it? I don't know, you judge. The first one comes from JC Smiley, who says, "Hey legends, with UFC being aggressively priced and Endeavour owning WWE now, do you think that we should be worried about PLEs being more expensive or WWE potentially being behind a paywall? Love you guys, keep up the great work." Love you, JC Smiley, you keep up the great work too. Thank you very much for your kind words. This is a really interesting thing to consider. I understand that UFC pay-per-views in the US are priced at something like $70-$80 a pop. Perhaps someone in the comment section can fill my knowledge gap in there. So it's definitely something to consider. Now, something else to consider is that WWE presumably has a contract with Peacock allowing Peacock to broadcast these things live, which is probably quite a big selling point of having WWE on your platform, is that you can watch the big shows live for like $4.99, $9.99 a month, depending on your tier. That contract would almost certainly need to be adhered to. So if Peacock have exclusivity in the US, that would forbid Endeavour initially for the length of that contract from doing that, I'd imagine. But I think it is something that Endeavour would look at. One of the company officials has said that they're going to try and use the UFC model for WWE as a business. So I think long term that is definitely something they will consider. That's pretty rough for us viewers who have become accustomed over the past 10 years or so to just paying $10 a month and getting a live show for a really awesome deal. WWE Network, we've still got it in the UK, is the best £10 in wrestling. It's a sensational deal. You get all that live stuff, you get, you know what you get. It's just like the massive archives, the whole thing. I would never stop paying it, even if I wasn't watching the current product, because the archives are just so strong. So it would be a real shame to see this introduced. But if Endeavour feel that it's best for their business, and all, signs indicate towards them being even more business focused than WWE is, yeah, I do think it is something they will look to do. But just keep the stuff with Peacock and contracts in mind. Probably not for a while, at least. So enjoy it while we've got it, I guess. Blackheart185 has been on saying, "Hey Andy," and a hello to the eel too. Don't say hello to the eel. He's a nasty little rat of a boy. Now that Vince is back and the writing is promptly plummeting, do you think that this is going to discourage people from jumping to WWE from AEW or elsewhere? So Simon Miller just uploaded a why video on the channel about 12 hours ago about this kind of subject. It's called "Why WWE Just Handed AEW a Major Opportunity." You should check that out for a comprehensive breakdown and his take on the matter. For me, I think that a Vince-led and written WWE is a lot less attractive to talent, apart from some psychopaths, maybe like The Undertaker, than a Triple H led and written WWE. Just look at these reports on morale. Triple H takes over, writing the creative, handling the HR and all of that stuff, and the talent relations, and the mood goes up. Vince comes back and it immediately goes down. So yeah, I do think it makes WWE a bit of a less attractive proposition. Obviously, it's still the biggest company. It's still got the biggest stage, and people grow up dreaming of the WrestleMania main event and all of that stuff, and that's what WWE can offer. So there are still selling points, of course. But from a HR standpoint and all of that, and the idea that you might go there now and not be used as well as Triple H might have used you, yeah, I definitely think it makes it less attractive. Of course, there are problems in other companies that maybe make them a bit less attractive as well, but I think it's a good talking point for sure, and we will probably see this come into play should Vince continue in this role, and it looks like Vince is going to continue in this role. Now, our final question comes from Thomas Head, who asks, although it isn't a Friday, a hearty salutations to you and this slivery little boy. I appreciate your solo news. I appreciate you watching. Shame about what you're having to cover. Is it a glimmer of hope that there is someone higher up the corporate ladder than Vince who might make him go away if he keeps bringing WWE's shows and roster down? Or is that a fool's dream? So, how to weigh this one up? This is a tough one because Dana White, of course, is retained as UFC president despite slapping his wife in public a few months ago. So, that says to me that Endeavor aren't all that fussed about a lot of things in terms of like public image. Also, under Endeavor, the UFC has been quite willing to just let top stars walk away. Francis Ngannou being the latest example of that. Inexplicably, the best heavyweight fighter in the world out of the company over a pay dispute. So, I don't think they're going to be that fussed, to be perfectly honest. I think if Vince ruffles a few feathers, and they'll just be like, hey, see you later. Also, I understand that when Endeavor took over the UFC, it was like, hey, legends like Randy Couture, legend contracts, bugger off. Little sentimentality there. So signs aren't great, unfortunately. Now, if it transpires that Vince's control has had like a hugely negative impact on business, then yeah, they might do something. If ratings start cratering, if things start falling to pieces, then yeah, they might look at the bottom line and go, what the heck is happening here? What's going on? What is the source? And if they decree that source to be Vince, maybe there is a way of figuring that out. But it should be noted that Vince is going to be one of the majority shareholders, if not the majority shareholder, in this new co that is forming as a merger of WWE and UFC. So that might prevent the situation. I'm no business expert. I don't know how that would fall into the legality of it all, but yeah, it's something to consider. I wouldn't hedge your hopes on it, put it that way. I wouldn't, make it the reason you keep going or whatever. I would keep the idea that Vince is maybe here forever in the back of your mind because it'll protect you if it does happen, but it sucks. This whole thing really sucks. You know what doesn't suck? It's today's and finally, however. This popped me huge. We got an exclusive screenshot here from Tony Khan's phone. Have a look at this. There's tremendous stuff across the board. Thank you to Kai Taniguchi for sending this through this morning. This popped me huge. Wow. I remember in January when Tony tweeted, a lot of people being really nice to me. I wonder why that is after Vince had returned. Yeah, it's an interesting time, isn't it? Anyway, thank you for joining me for another solo news video. I think it'll be me alone tomorrow and Friday as well. Where's all my friends, man? Where's all my friends at? You can like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. That stuff really does help us, so please, oblige. That'd be very kind of you. Follow us on Twitter at WhatCulture WWE and myself at Andy H. Murray. The H stands for Hoop 50. Inter Hooper. See you later.